We're back with another conversation this week, and I'm excited to have Robbie Gaines here this week. And Robbie is our Bluefield Campus Pastor, and we're excited to have a conversation today. We're in our series called At The Movies, where we are taking movies all throughout history and pulling some biblical truths from them. And I love the movie that you chose this weekend, which is The Lion King.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, it's a great film.
It's great.
Right?
Hakuna Matata.
That's right. It's a wonderful phrase.
It is.
And so, as we talk about The Lion King, there's so many great things about that movie. Yep. But really, you kind of dove into the fall of Simba,
right?
And the emotion that really encapsulates his existence for most of the movie, which is shame.
Right.
And man, that's something that I feel like all of us deal with. At various moments in time, maybe a lot of the time, is shame. And so why don't you kind of set up where you're coming from?
Yeah, I really was coming from this in a place of my own insecurities, my own questions.
Sure.
And I look at the seasons in my life where, man, I got everything going for me. I got the girl, all those types of things. But then I look at the other parts of my life where, man, I'm really struggling in life and I can't seem to win. I can't seem to get it right, and I'm always somebody is always looking at me like, you just didn't get it, and really the more painful thing is when I look at myself and say, man, I'm just not good enough. I can't do this.
And I think that maybe now in history more than ever, it's so easy to have that comparison game, right? Even different than when we were younger. Not that we're that old, right? But
I'm getting there. I got some gray up here.
Yeah, same. It's coming. Kids will do that to you.
I'm ready.
But I remember being a kid, like before the internet existed and before there was social media and like this ever connected thing, like this thing that vibrates all the time and tells me what to do. It is a comparison trap, right?
It is.
We live in this world that is it's painful sometimes, right? And you see people's highlight reel, right? You flip through Instagram, you watch videos on YouTube, and you're like, man, their life is good. Yeah. And you know whose life is bad? Mine.
No, it's mine.
I thought I had the bad. See, and everyone feels that way, right? You feel like you have the bad life, and everybody else is good. Right. And so in The Lion King, we see that with Simba. He leaves this sort of promised land that is his to rule out of shame, right? No one would believe me what happened. They'll all think that I killed my dad. And spoiler alert, sorry if you've seen Lion King, but it's an old movie, although you can watch the new one.
You had your chance.
You've had 20 years. But he leaves that in shame. But how many times do we do that too, right? We experience this shame, we experience rejection, and instead of dealing with it, we walk away. And we're like, man, I don't want to... when you were kind of sharing your message, I thought about, there's an Avett Brothers song called Shame, and it talks about having boatloads of shame. And every time I listen to that song, I'm like,
I got that.
I feel that, right?
I have that,
So I guess really the reality is we all experience shame, right? We all experience this falling from favor, feeling like we've fallen out of favor and out of grace. So what do we do about that?
Well, I think what you do about it is in direct proportion to who you go to about it. Because what we certainly try to do is try to go to Facebook or to Instagram and to all the things that you talked about to try and get a comparison of what somebody else's shameful life looks like. We're just trying to find somebody that we could measure up above. We want to see somebody that we aspire to, but really it's, I want to see somebody who's got it worse than me, and we can't seem to find them. But really, and certainly in the movie of Lion King, the tide turns when Simba sees Mufasa in the clouds, and he says, remember who you are. And really for us as a follower of Christ, it's remember who your Father is, and that will remind you who you are.
Yeah, and it can be so hard though in that moment to really remember that, right? Simba struggles with that, and even in that clip, he's like, "I don't see anything but me." And they're saying, "Look, Rafiki says, look closer, right?
Yeah.
You need to look closer. And man, that's when you were talking about that and I watched that clip, I'm like, yes, that is me. Like I need to look closer because I'm staring at the wrong things, right? I'm staring at Instagram or Twitter or whatever to give me viability and that people care about me. And if I could just be funnier on Twitter than the world, if I could, I don't know what you think, but all of us think that, right? If we're honest, man, if I could just be more like X, Y, Z, if I could just do these things, then I would be accomplished. And for me, man, I fall into that comparison trap often. Yeah. If I'm being honest, I mean, I really do, that it's like, man, I could do that, right? You see someone succeed, and instead of being like, man, I'm so happy for you, it's like, well, I could have done that. Yeah. Why didn't they ask me to do that? But man, and then that brings more shame because I shouldn't think that way.
Absolutely.
But God is there welcoming us back, right? He's not sitting over us, lording over us in like this judgment, right? Simba's afraid to go back of what they would think, but really, Rafiki reminds him that he just needs to take his rightful place as the king. He's already been granted that. He already has favor with the kingdom there and with his father. He already has that.
Yep, he does. He does. Yeah. And one thing that I think about, like especially that moment where Rafiki goes out and says, "Look closer." When I was in Tanzania, one of the people that we were with, he kept saying to me, "Rafiki." And I was like, no, I'm not a wise guy.
Not a wise baboon.
I'm not a wise baboon. I'm not cracking fruit. That's a question. What is that fruit? I tried to look it up, couldn't find it. But anyway, they kept saying that, and then finally asked, what does Rafiki mean? And they said friend.
Oh.
And so, I mean, there's something deeper there as well with when you're really going through hard times. If you want to look closer within yourself, if you have a close friend who knows you and is able to help you look closer. I thought that was something else.
Man, that's good. That makes me think about the last conversation we had with Steve Robinson, our Bristol campus pastor. We were talking about how to know God's will for your life. This big, huge question that everyone wants to know. And one of the things that he shared was to have people around you, to have friends around you, and how important it is to be in community with one another and to ask for help and having that community, the difference that it can make. So, and if you're in a down place, having friends is good, right?
Is.
Having people around you is good. And I think so much of what we want, right? We crave that community. We maybe put the effort in the wrong place online. We're trying to be better. And if I was better, I'd have more friends. But the reality is, maybe we just need to be a friend to someone, right?
That's
there
good.
are people around you. You ask, in the Bible, we see in Matthew, that Jesus commands his disciples to go and baptize people and, to bring the gospel to all the nations and to love your neighbor. And you say, well, who's my neighbor? Is like, where are you, right? When you're in Tanzania, I was in Tanzania last year, like, that's my neighbor, right? And if I'm here, then the people around me, that's my neighbor. And loving them is not just something where we give to them, it's where we find community. And so much of our life, I think would be easier if we remembered that we didn't have to do it by ourselves. But there's this pressure, right, of society. There's this pressure of like, I don't know, just like being a human where you're like, I have to do this. And only I can do this. And the reality is you don't have to do it alone. And we see in The Lion King, right, Simba is reminded when Nala comes and finds him. And she's like, hey, you should go back. And he's like, I can't do that. She's like, yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can.
And she's there to remind him and like he has so I think there's something there that, man, when we have friends around us, it is so much easier to stand in that group when someone's holding you up because there have been times in my life when I needed somebody to hold me up. I'm weary and weak and like in need of something. And I have a friend who comes along and carries me. And the beautiful thing about that is that you get to do that for someone else too. So you need a friend. You get to be a friend. There's this, there's a circle of life, if you will.
Wow, man.
And it moves
Look
us
at
off.
that. Whew, getting deep.
Man. So, but when we're together, we are stronger when we're together.
We are. Absolutely.
It makes me think about another thing about being in Tanzania. This movie makes you think about those things.
It does. Yeah.
And, when we were in this, I don't know if you went to Ngorongoro to the crater, but we went to this crater and got to see all these animals. Like, it was like legit, the Lion King real life.
Yeah, real life.
Safari, you're watching.
Yeah, but don't hug the lion in that one.
Yeah, don't get out of the car. They're not, the lion's in charge there. Yeah. Nobody messes with them.
No.
And everyone else, though, they walk in a circle. They walk together.
Yeah.
And our guide was pointing out some of the wildebeest, and they called them zero brain because they said they forget why they were walking together.
Wow.
And then they'd wander off.
Yeah.
To go, they like see shiny object thing. It's like, oh, hey, what's that?
Wow.
And they go off alone, and that's when they get killed.
Wow.
When they're together, they're good, right?
Yeah.
They're strength in that number, but they call them zero brain because they forget why they were together in the first place, and he walks off. And so it's like,
don't be a zero brain.
Yeah, don't be exactly. Don't be a zero brain. Don't walk alone.
Don't walk alone.
And that's easy to say that, right?
It is.
And I think both of us can sit here and say in honesty that we're not saying that from a place of doing it perfectly.
Right.
Like, oh, don't walk alone, because we never walk alone. Like, man, I feel alone often. There are times that I've been alone. Yep. But I do know that every time that I've been in that place of loss, in that place of being kind of gone, in the desert, the thing that brings me back are my friends.
Yep.
Right. And whether that's, your spouse, whether that's your parents, whether that's people that you work with, it's people that you're in a ministry with, the church with, wherever that is, man, there's strength in community.
Absolutely.
So that helps us get out of the comparison trap.
Yeah.
And we need to remember who our Father is.
Yep.
He's full of love for us, and He's full of grace for us. And you said something that really kind of pulls all this together, and I love it. And you said that there is grace that's already been given.
Yeah.
When we see ourselves in right standing with God.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So a personal point of shame for me would be when I was in 7th grade, I looked at pornography for the first time. Sure. And that first time, it was all great. And I was like, it was like a whole new world. Sure. We're not going into Latin now with the whole new world. But certainly that opened something up that would change the rest of my life. And the shame that I received from that happened later on than what I even could have imagined. Yeah. And so the shame that I had there was because, one, in my heart, I knew there was a purity that had been really, it was taken away. Yeah. And also the way of looking at somebody else in the way that God does not look at us, right? Sure. And all the things that go with pornography in your marriage and all those things. But I really sought out some redemption for that. But it was so painful going into that. Yeah. And so hard to reach out to people and to build trust with people, to be able to share those types of things. But when I did, I liken it to what Levi Lusko said in his book, Lions Roar, or Running Towards the Roar, is that when lions go in a pride, there will be one at the head, and then there will be the rest of them behind or on the side. And so your initial reaction when you're scared is to run away from the roar. But the lions trick you because there will be one that is roaring, but all the rest of the things that are really there to attack you are the direction that you're trying to run away from. Wow. And so the thought is to run towards the roar. So run towards the shame. And for me, the grace upon grace, the grace stacked on grace really came in when I did that. And I started opening up to other friends and to other people about, you know what? This hurts me. And this is a shameful thing for me, and I need to get this. Now, I'm not going to just go up to everybody and say, "Hey, I'm Robbie. I watch porn." That's not it at all. But rather,
because there's safety in that community of people.
Absolutely, right. But it is definitely I've received grace from sharing that, even though it was painful, even though it was shameful. I received grace there, and I know that grace was already given, and I know if there is a mess up, if there is something that happens again, there will be grace again there. And the people that I talk to, and especially as a young man, all of my friends have gone through the same thing, and they're thinking I'm the only one.
Yeah.
And grace upon grace in that.
Yeah. And one of the most powerful things in the English language, right, is me too.
Yeah.
I know that,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
And when we share in community, when we say, you know what, I'm not going to let shame define me. I'm going to be honest about this.
Yep.
What are we met with other people?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Who are right there with you, and you can go along with it.
And now there's a deeper bond. Now there's a greater connection. Now that, you're strengthening your circle of people. Your Rafiki is growing.
Yeah.
Your friendship is growing. And so I thought this was just a great message, and a great thought. Awesome. Really is, how do we deal with shame? Because I think all of us really do struggle with that from time to time. And if you're watching this and you're like, yeah, I do. Yeah, you're not alone, right? All of us deal with shame. I hope that you've heard from both of us just like, yeah, it's a thing that is real and present and not just in the past, but it's going to come up and it's going to come back again. And having those people around you to deal with that is the way that we do that. And we see that story of redemption in The Lion King as Simba comes back into his rightful place, takes charge, asserts himself. And he's the king. Yeah. So if you haven't watched The Lion King, you should watch it. It's a great movie. And Robbie, thank you so much for sitting down for this conversation. Yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, listen to our podcasts and all that, so you can stay up to date with everything that's happening here at Highlands Fellowship.